This cross-country racing action from the final 2 rounds, proudly brought to you by Epsom Plastics. A double-header to end things off for the 2019 Tour, and it's been an incredible season where we have covered the length and breadth of Southern Africa, racing high-speed, tech, and mixed terrain as well. This time around, though, we finish off at Zorgvliet, just outside the town of Bronkhorstspruit, for rounds 5 and 6 of the Tour to decide all of the championships. Only one of the categories at this stage was wrapped up. Everyone else was out there fighting for the last few bits of cheese and the last few points on the plate. It was going to be a rough terrain as well. Raced at the GXCC event just 4 weeks prior, so it was going to be whooped up, chopped up, and the guys that raced for 2 days were going to know they were in the fight. They were going to have to tough it out for 2 days straight and survive to bring home the number 1 plates. First up was going to be the time trial, a 35k sprint loop that was going to set up all the starting order come the final race. The big race was going to be a 55-kilometer loop, and the pros were touted to go out for 6 big laps of it. The 35k sprinter was going to give an idea of how to set the bikes up. Good to have Pepper back there, and all of the riders that were going out, some of them for their first full season of National Championship racing, and it was all going to get wrapped up here over the next 2 days. The rain was promised, never seemed to arrive, which meant it was going to be dust bowl racing all the way through the last 2 days of the Tour before they saw the checkered flag for the final time in 2019. Pepper was back from his double wrist injury picked up in the Cape. But before we go into the main race, let's catch up with our championship contenders, starting things out with our OR1 leader, Lawrence Mahoney.
It's been an up and down year. It's been an interesting year. We lost Kenny Gilbert to the championship. He was really on form this year, and he was leading the championship before his accident. So he's out for the year, and it opened the door for myself, my teammate Ross. I'm leading the championship, like you say, and Ross behind me, and today and tomorrow it's going to determine the OR1 national champion. It's going to be a tough day. I've hosted a GXCC here before, and it's rough. Braking bumps, accelerating bumps, deep lines, a lot of loose rocks. So, I think the key thing here today is conserve energy and pick your lines carefully and be smooth. Save the bike, obviously. I had a good time trial now, finished in the lead, so I'll be starting first, and then, we're going to attack the day and see what it's got in store for us.
The championship rival on the day, on the season, and on the Tour has been Ross Branch. Just a few skinny points between the two, and starting position was going to be key. So everyone was giving it all they had on the 35k time trial sprint. On the OR2s, the man on the season has been the red plate of Gareth Cole.
Between Jared Coetzee and myself this whole season, we've been 1 and 2. Managed to beat him every race so far, but it's going to come down to the wire today. I think I just have to stay in the top 3 for both days, and I should nail down the championship. But after time trial, we're going to be very, very tired and stiff after today. It's quite rough out there. So we're just going to have to stay on the bike.
Jazz Coetzee has been building pace throughout the season, and this kind of rough, tough terrain really suits his aggressive attacking style. He was going to be pushing Coley the whole way through. The other call, this time Hayden, was points leader in the OR3s coming into this round.
I've had a pretty decent, consistent season this year. Been going quite well. It's going to be a tough day today. The track's pretty rough. It's coming down to the wire between me and Brad Cox, but we'll give it our all and see what happens today.
Brad Cox would have had the red plate had it not been for a crash in Lesotho, breaking his collarbone, but he was going to be pushing hard and trying to pull back that points deficit. For the seniors, it's been 4 for 4 on the Tour for Bolly van Rooyen as a runaway points leader in the seniors. The race for the seniors was for the 2nd and 3rd. In the Masters, it's a 2-horse race once again, with Faan van Deventer the most consistent on the Tour, with Farmer chasing him.
The season went well so far. The more technical, like Lesotho race suits my small bike. I've got a 250 4-stroke. It hasn't got the legs to keep up with the faster Oaks. They've got real fast bikes. Today is a real test. It is really tiring. I think today is definitely about who can hold on to the bars the longest and who's the fittest. I can feel that this time trial already took some out of me.
His rival on the day and for 2 days would be Wayne Farmer. He'd have to win both days to take the title. And then for the high school 125s, the red plate at this stage belonged to Ryan Peltzer.
Started off a bit rough. getting not in the top 3, not finishing in the top 3, but Lesotho did it for me. I really enjoyed Lesotho. I managed to get into the top 10 as well, top 10 overall and first in my class. And then since then, this is the next round I'm looking forward to today. It's going to be super rough. We've just had a part of the track and looking forward to tomorrow as well. I think it's going to be a good weekend race.
His rival on speed was always going to be Davin Cocker, another rider coming back from injuries and trying desperately to get those last points on the plate. With the time trial done and dusted, Lawrence Mahoney would open up our racing account, so join us after the break to see who walks away with the number 1 plates in 2019 for the Cross Country Championship. Welcome back to Bronkhorst Spruit, where we go racing. After the time trial, it was Lawrence Mahoney that put himself out front. He would have clear air, but only with a small, almost 30-second gap over his championship arch rival and current number 1 plate for the last 3 seasons, Ross Branch. Lawrence, though, arrived here at Zorgvliet, focused and ready to attack straight out the gate. Ross was going to be pushing him hard as well, and it literally came down to who would win each of the events on round 5 and 6 to see who would be champion. No matter what, though, it was going to be the factory KTM boys that were going to take a number 1 plate. But would it be Ross, or would it once again be Lawrence? D'Artagnan Lovejoy on the Shimwells Yamaha was in good form and had once again thrown down a good number. He was going to get chased down by the fastest qualifier in the OR2s of Jared Coetzee, and not long after that, it was going to be Charon Moore. Then Gareth Cole, the man with the red plate, knew what he had to do. He had to make the pass early on. And then it was a bit of a crossover. A lot of motocross faces coming into play. Michael Pentecost coming out of nowhere, as well as Tristan Purdon trying to figure things out on cross-country racing. He's done it before, but that was a motocross spec bike, and he was going to test and see if he could tough it out on motocross setup suspension. Talking of motocross, Scotty Haygate making the trip all the way down here to try and help out and rob points in the chase for the OR3s. Wade Blau had out-qualified Bolly Van Rooyen in the seniors, and he was going to try and break the duck and try and win the last couple of rounds of the senior tour. Bolly had already wrapped up the points, so today and the next day was simply about bringing it home and nailing down another number 1 plate. The rest of the categories started to make their way out into the fields, and with a 55-kilometer loop and touted to be a 6-lap race format, it was going to be a long, extremely physical and tough day in the saddle for our top competitors. The regional competitors would be joining on day number 2, but by that stage, the track would be super chopped up, and then there would just be survival mode to try and bring home the bacon. Henty Hanekom had a good run as well, putting himself up, qualifying just outside the top 10, ahead of Faan van Deventer, who looked like he was not coming to terms with how the track was laid out. Vian Duplessis was also trying to challenge to nail down his number 4 spot in the seniors race. Alcock was also out there trying to see what he could do. One of the fastest chargers down there in the distance was Dav Cocker. He had had a rough time of it in the prologue and was on the big fight back trail, as was this man, Ian Pepper, the main guy out of Peps and Plastics on the factory racing Husqvarna. He was going to be in a fight for the Masters, trying to make his way inside of a top 5. Out front, though, the story was all about the big show. Lawrence Mahoney had switched out his 500 that had been on the whole way through the season onto a 450 and was absolutely sprinting off the front. Lap on lap, he was able to pull almost a minute out of his closest rival, Ross Branch. A nice mix of open and tech meant that there was no getting away from it. You were going to be physically working the whole way through. And the track that had been used at the GXCC event just 4 weeks ago was whooped up, chopped up, and with no rain, it was dust bowl racing as well. After the prologue, a lot of the times came in very close, meaning that you were going to be in dust from the early stages, and probably for the next 4 to 5 hours. D'Artagnan Lovejoy was holding station at the moment, trying to stay in third. So it was the OR1 Pro Big Bangers running 1, 2, and 3 on the road. The smaller bikes, though, would really come to life in the tech zones. In the forest, which had been burnt down a little bit, meaning that visibility was slightly better, Jared Coetzee was starting to find his form, and Bradley Cox was right there as well. Cox was aiming for a top 5 overall at this stage, as he was running way out front ahead of his rivals in the OR3s. The Ripper, Ryan Ripley, had been moved up from factory support onto the Peps and Plastics factory Husqvarna for this round, and was chasing down a number 4 in the OR1s. The brawler, Ian Rawle, was now up to the number 2 spot in the OR2s, dropping Gareth Cole down to 3rd and potentially out of the championship running, which meant this man, Jazz Coetzee, was on a flyer and starting to climb the ladder. Taki Bodjodges, another rider who had come back from almost 12 months of injury, was back into the mix, also running inside the top 5 for the OR2s and bringing along his good buddy Lo Schmidt for the ride. Those riders were all running inside of the top 10 overall. Pentecost was also doing a great job of it. In fact, he was running second wheel in the OR3s, and Wade Blau was outright leader in the seniors, just outside of a top 10 overall. Ian Rawle, the brawler as he's known, likes to tough it out, and he was climbing the ladder as well. Hadn't had the best prologue, but he was finding the running absolutely perfect. They were heading back to the DSP. Most of the top pros were on a 2-lapper race format and strategy, but even with that in hand, what was a 30-second buffer coming out of the time trial had now become a minute after lap 1. Ross was starting to lose the championship at this stage, but still almost had Mahoney in his sights in the open ground. D'Artagnan Lobjoy was comfortable in the number 3 spot on the road. These riders were desperate now to get themselves back into the pits. Jared Coetzee got himself up into 4th wheel on the road and was outright leader in the OR2s, with now Sharon Moore building his pace. He was trying to chase down Dart to get a number 3 spot in the OR1 Big Bangers. One of the fastest lap times on lap number 2 was this man, Brad Cox. He had absolutely chomped up to the terrain and was looking forward to his first refuel. With 2 laps counted, Mahoney was off the front. Refresh, refuel, and get going once again. Mahoney at this stage in full control of the race and of the championship, but there was a different situation in second as Branch was retired. Was it bike or was it body? As Lawrence Mahoney headed out, it was clear it was the body. Branch had an issue. A mistimed seat bounce and a compressed vertebra. That was going to be Ross man down, not only for today, but for the rest of the championship and possibly the next couple of weeks. That meant that Dart was moving himself up into second in class, and Jazz was now going to be in a dice to move up inside of the top 3 in the overalls. It was a long refuel for the Dart, and that meant there was going to be a change inside the pits as well. As now Jazz Coetzee moved up into second spot, Dart was going to be in the dust. The brawler had done a great job as well to put himself now inside of the top 5 and was a man on a mission. Still, there was no sign of Gareth Cole, as Lo Schmidt was now in the big dice, trying to work his way inside of a top 5. Great to see him move back from the 450s and find his home on the 350s. And the Ripper was now on for a podium as well, as Sharon Moore had stepped out of the event with a clutch issue. All the rest of the racers were starting to find the going tough as we neared the halfway marker of the event. This was where the National Championship racers really earned their money. Bolly Van Rooyen was doing a great job of it to stay just outside of the top 10 overall and was still a solid second in the seniors. Whilst in the Masters, it was all about Wayne Farmer doing what he had to do. He had to win both days. Matty Wilson came in the high schools number 2 on championship points, but it had his issues. And Hanti Hanekom, who was running a strong second place in the championship for the seniors, was third on the road. And for the OR3s trying to break a top 5, Eric Merry was running good form. The fastest man in the high schools, though, was Dav Cocker. Even though he had started the day with a big 5-minute deficit, was running off the front. But on the points, and with the calculators out, Peltzer knew second place would still give him the championship. Van van Deventer was running a number 2 spot for the Masters and slowly watching his chance of the title slip away as Farmer was way up the road. Vian du Plessis for the Black Iron Racing Squad was doing a great job running a number 4 spot, and that was going to guarantee a number 4 in the championship. Purdon, at this stage, was starting to feel the pain of cross-country racing, but he was still out there to grab the points, and valuable they were as well. Hayden Cole needed all of them at this stage. It just wasn't enough. Jean-Louis Devet was also starting to get up onto the wheel of the would-be champion, Hayden Cole, as Pepper came through. Starting to really feel the heat. Arm pump and fatigue were coming in big time for all riders. All riders that was, except for Lawrence Mahoney, who at this stage had hit the afterburners and was absolutely gone. With no Ross Branch on his tail and a massive gap to second place, D'Artagnan Lobjoy, which had actually been taken over by this man, Jazz Coetzee, it was Lawrence's show out front as he started to extend almost a minute over his closest rivals, lap on lap. D'Artagnan Lobjoy was still second of the fastest in the OR1s and third on the road, as the track started to chew up and the day got longer and rougher. Remember, 55 Ks times 6 for our pro category racers was not messing around, and every single rider came back saying that they'd hit the wall between laps 3 and 4. After that, it was simply survival. Pentecost, who has got a good pedigree coming from motocross, racing small bikes and big bikes alike, he was also starting to tough it out, as Pepper and the Masters were the first guys to see the checkers. Farmer was one step closer to his championship. The flag on day number 1, though, belonged to Lawrence Mahoney after completing 6 grueling laps. Knew he just had one more day to go to nail down his championship. Jared Coetzee had done an amazing job to get second wheel and outright win in the OR2s to stay ahead of Cox, who'd also charged up the ladder, winning his class.
Big thanks to my team, brother leader at KTM, my mechanics, Shondor, Kevin. Like I said, it's a team effort. My family, my wife, the Lord for keeping me safe. So it's a good day.
At the end of day number 1, all about Lawrence Mahoney running off front, staying ahead of D'Artagnan Lovejoy, Jazz Coetzee third and first of the OR2s, Brad Cox running in number 4 and first of the OR3s. For the seniors, it was a great ride coming out of Wade Blau to take his first win of the tour and knock Bolly down to a number 2 spot, but still in the championship lead. Farmer did what he had to do, beating out on Van Deventer, and Dav Cocker was the fastest of the high schools, but Peltzer still led the championship. Join us after the break for day 2. Welcome back. It's day number 2 and the final time of asking for the National Cross Country Championship in 2019. Round number 6, and this is where it all gets decided. Overnight, the promise of rain never really arrived. Couple of little spits, but nothing to wet the ground, which meant it was going to be hard pack racing once again, and this time around we had our regional invitational competitors joining the fray as well. So a few more bikes and a few more wheels going out there to chew up the terrain. Overnight, the call was made though. The track was too long and conditions were getting too hard. The pro categories would now get trimmed down to a 4-lap racing format, with our Masters running a 2-lap as well as our regional invitational races doing a 2-lap affair. It was still going to be a tough day at the office, and there were still championships to be decided. The overnight call though from Ross Branch was no lineup, meaning that Lawrence Mahoney simply had to finish on the day to get the job done and nail down his 7th championship, not in a row, but of his illustrious career. Everyone took to the chase, and once again, first call of the day was the time trial. This time around, it was an incredible run where Sharon Moore put more than 30 seconds into Jared Coetzee. Jazz was in a great position as well as Brad Cox, and they were both trying to nail down their first title in category. For Jared, the OR2s, following on from his OR3 title in 2018, and for Brad Cox, trying to nail down his first ever big number 1 plate of his career. Wade Blau had also run the cheese and was inside of the top 5. He was going to get chased down by Taki Bodgeorges and the brawler Ian Rawle. Good buddies on and off the track. D'Artagnan Lovejoy hadn't got the start that he wanted to, which meant he was going to have to chase into the dust. It was all about clear air in the morning running though for Sharon Moore, as himself and Jared Coetzee set the pace early on to try and break away from the pack. For Lawrence Mahoney, it was simply a day of wrapping up shop. He had to stay focused, stay controlled and stay tight for 4 laps of racing to get his big number 1 plate. Brad Cox was out there in the early stages on a little 250 getting chased down by Blau, the leading senior, who once again was much faster than Bolly van Rooyen. And look at how the dust had chewed up the track from day number 1 to day number 2. Dart was going to be in a huge battle to try and run the numbers, and Purdon, now with a much better setup on his factory KTM, was going to try and challenge for a podium in the OR3s. Jared Coetzee's pace was actually so strong that eventually he got up to the back wheel and made the pass on Sharon Moore to put Sharon down into the number 2 spot. But the 350 KTM factory and the Roost KTM 450 were running the numbers. Lawrence was still in the sweet spot. Third was comfortable for him. No one was going to catch up to his back wheel, but there were some other big stories happening out on the track. For the 125 high schools, unfortunately, it was going to be a drop down on points for Matty Wilson, as he just couldn't hold the pace of the top 2 out front. Former champion Nardis Rabi also was going to try and challenge for a podium, but it wasn't going to be a win. It was once again Dav Cocker. In the Masters though, Stevie King was doing a good job, and he'd have been one of the guys that was super pumped to see a trim back down to 2 laps. Once again, Wade Blau was charging his way up the field. In fact, by this stage, was getting himself up to challenge inside of a top 5. He'd already got himself around the brawler Ian Rawle. And Brad Cox was also starting to really build pace and stretch himself away from his closest competition. As many bikes as he could put between himself and Hayden Cole was going to decide the OR3 title. For D'Artagnan Lovejoy, he was also trying to get himself back up onto pace. By this stage, trying to challenge for a top 3. But it was a sublime ride on day 2 and the final day of racing for the championship for Charon Moore. As back and forth they went, swapping out the lead lap on lap in the early stages between Charon Moore and Jared Coetzee, with Lawrence Mahoney super comfortable. Third place was a win for him. For Gareth Cole, it was starting to slip away. He had mechanical problems on day number 1 and was now trying to battle his way outside of a top 3, which meant he was going to be losing the OR2 title to Jared Coetzee. And the Ripper, Ryan Ripley, was getting himself in a position to try and challenge for another 3 spot. He had taken 3rd place on day 1. He was trying to nail down a 3 spot on day number 2 once again. By the halfway marker of the race, though, it was all about Jared Coetzee for the first time on the season, running clear air out front and extending away from Charon Moore. Charon said the whole way through the day he could see the dust, just could not get up to the back wheel. And then just behind him, his good buddy and teammate on the Roos KTM squad, Wade Blau, the leading senior, had got up to 3rd wheel. Lawrence Mahoney had faded back, allowing a couple of the pinners to get through, including this guy, the brawler Ian Rawle. Lawrence was simply in survival mode, allowing all of his competitors in the other classes to come through. Brad Cox was an outright leader once again in the OR3s, and Lawrence simply wanted to finish. It would have been the longest day in the saddle for him to try and wrap up shop. For Van van Deventer, he hadn't had the prologue or the last 2 rounds that he wanted, and it meant that Wayne Farmer was going to be running off the front as far as the Masters class went. 3rd place, small dude, big bike though. The 450 Sherco of Ian Fenter was in a good position, trying to stay ahead of a resurgent Ian Pepper, who seemed to have come back to life with a nice short 2-lap sprint on day 2. Purdon was up to 2nd place this time around, finding a much better sweet spot on his machine. And Lo Schmidt was also going to be challenging inside of a top 4 for his OR2s. Ripper was right there, and a 450 getting chased down by the fastest 125 on the season. Unfortunately, the man was not going to walk away with a title, but Dav Cocker was the fastest on each of the events he lined up. The red plate, though, was still all about Ryan Peltzer, Mr. 125. And at his final time of asking before he moves up into the 250 class for next season, Mr. 125 was going to nail down his number 1 plate. Farmer, desperate to get the numbers on the page, and knew that he was going to be able to take 2 wins back-to-back and nail down his number 1 plate in the Masters. As the time ticked on, though, everyone got tense, and the final checkered flag came out. The last overall win of the season went to Jazzman Jared Coetzee, taking the outright win on round number 6, as well as the title and the win in the OR2s. That's back-to-backs and the first of KTM's titles. Charon Moore had an incredible run of it on day number 2 and the final round of the championship, walking away with the win in the OR1s. Here's how it broke down officially. OR1s was all about Charon Moore beating out Lawrence Mahoney. Jazz Coetzee beat out on Ian Rawle in the OR2s, and Cox went 1 for 1 on the tour as well to win his championship ahead of Purdon on the day. Wade Blau once again took the win in the seniors on round 5 and 6 ahead of Bolly Van Rooyen. In the Masters, it was Farmer ahead of Fenter, and the 125 high schools, Cocker ahead of Peltzer.
Jazz, massive story on the season, massive story on the championship, but this final race, that is one of the best rides I've seen out of you forever.
Man, I just sensed it from the start. You know, I mean, 4 laps to put it down, make it happen, and yeah, I can't give it up to my team, my dad, my family, my friends, you know, everyone who's been behind me through the bad times, you know, the good times, the bad times. Man, I'm so stoked. What a way to finish the season.
Behind Jared and second overall, the man that came to life at round 6, Charon Moore.
Jared had unbelievable pace in the morning. I was a little bit scared. I haven't been riding at the front ever, so I didn't know what pace to run, and then towards every lap I think I got faster and faster and put in a hard charge in the last lap, 110 billion%. But yeah, I'm so stoked. To end the season like this is awesome.
And for the OR3s, the ride of round 5 and 6 was Cox, and with it, the number 1 plate.
Brad, it feels like you almost made this season hard on yourself, but that came down to those last 2 races. You had to get those wins, didn't you? I got to feel good.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Yeah, I had such a perfect season, and then one stupid mistake put it all upside down, but yeah, I'm over the moon. You know, to finally get a championship feels like it's been forever. You know, the switch to off-road it's been good for me, and yeah, finally can put one to my name now, and I think that's number 6 in my career, so yeah, it's good, and definitely gonna celebrate this one tonight.
For the high school 125s, Ryan Peltzer played the championship game, 2 seconds, but with it, the title.
Ryan, it's been cool. I've been watching you since 85cc days. You've been on 125s. It feels like forever. And at the final year that you could go racing, you finally nailed down the championship.
Yeah, no, couldn't come at a better time. You know, just finish off 1 to 5 career as a bang, and yeah, I'm really happy.
The man in the seniors for round 5 and 6 was this guy, Wade Blau, going 1 for 1 and beating out on Bolly van Rooyen. But Bolly still nails down the title.
Bolly, in the seniors, you've been the man to beat the whole way through the season, and once again, you've got the job done at the final time of asking. But you made it hard on yourself.
No, this was definitely not easy. Yeah, it was tough going. I think on the day or on this weekend, you know, I don't think I quite had the pace. But I just needed to have a good finish, and I think we just had the championship in mind, and that's what I went for, just to keep it clean and get to the finish.
For the Masters, the weekend was all about Farmer.
You had to win both days. It's a big ask as well. That's a lot of pressure, but you handled it.
No, it is, mate. You know, it was do or die. You have to win, beat Farm both days, otherwise I lose championship. And we've just pushed and actually just exceeded our boundaries that we're used to doing. But awesome 2 days of riding and really, really great. The route just got so chopped up. But where you could go fast, you could hammer it and then just, you know, bide your time in other sections. It just made your consistency, if I can put it that way. It was awesome.
And finishing further down the field than he wanted to, but nailing down his title, Lawrence Mahoney gets the big one, the number 1 plate in the OR1s.
What a story, and what a race as well. I can see there's some tension on you for this last one.
Yes, Matt, it's a team effort. You know, there's a lot of sacrifices that go into this. There's a lot of blood, sweat and tears. And you know, to close the year off like this is a blessing. And I'm not racing next year, so I'm going to hang my boots up. And to hang it up with the number 1, can't ask for better.
This cross-country racing action from the final 2 rounds, proudly brought to you by Pepson Plastics.